Hi everyone, welcome to the Unidos Game Jam Judge stream. My name is Elaine Gomez and I'm one of the co-founders of Latinx in Gaming. And today I am joined by the awesome judges that have dedicated a little bit of their time and their expertise to judge some of the games that we have separated as contenders and possible winners for the different categories that we have for the Game Jam. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Gilliard, why don't we start with you?
For sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Juliard Lopez. I'm a senior game designer at the FIFA team at Electronic Arts in Vancouver, Canada. I'm originally from Brazil. I worked in the Brazilian gaming industry for 10 years before I moved over to Vancouver. And then I've been with EA for 12 years. So quite a few FIFA games published during that time. I'm a huge football and video games fan. I'm also a big fan of game jams. So the opportunity to be here playing awesome games and talking about them with you guys and learning from all the other judges as well was one that I couldn't pass up. So very happy that Latinx in Gaming is doing this, and very happy to participate. I also, during my free time, one of the things I like to do to continue to connect with the game development community, particularly in Brazil, is I am the host of a podcast called PodQuest. So you can find it at podquest.com.br, where we talk about games and development every week. And it's in Portuguese. So, apologies for whoever doesn't speak Portuguese, but it's at least a little way to give back to the Brazilian community and continue to connect with them. And since I have this amazing opportunity to be working overseas with, the things I love, which are football and video games. So might as well spend some time and helping people that, are in the same spot I was not so long ago. So that's why we do that. And again, game jams are another great opportunity to learn and grow and just experiment more awesome games. So happy to be here and happy to be part of this.
Who's next?
Awesome. My name is Luis Villegas. I work at Bungie. I've been at Bungie for about 15, 16 years. I work on the technology side, mainly overseeing investments for online services, game security, infrastructure. I was there since the early Halo days, so I got to see Bungie grow from like 60 people to 800 people now. I'm from Medellin, Colombia. I've been in the States for a while now. And I'm super stoked to be here. Like, this is my first time judging a game jam, and it's been awesome seeing the fantastic games that we have, the different submissions.
Hey everybody, my name is Paul Beckler, and I'm a sound designer at EA as well in Vancouver, and I was asked to be a part of this kind of to help judge. With my background, I've been at EA for about 5 years now. I taught audio at a post-secondary institution for about 6 years before that, and I've been doing sound in general for about the past 15 years. So this was just a really awesome opportunity to learn more about Hispanic culture and heritage and just get the chance to play some awesome games.
Hello, my name is Paula Silva. I'm a Brazilian game developer living in Vancouver, and I'm currently working as an assistant technical arts at Electronic Arts as well. I joined EA around 2 years ago, but I've been working with games for the last 5 years. I currently working in the FIFA project. Um, Other than games, I don't know. I like to watch the Premier League games. I'm a Manchester United fan. Let's see. I love to cook and watch videos about different recipes. Hey, Julie. And also love to watch videos of cats. So I am accepting recommendation for both. And yeah, I
Nice.
like to play games. I like to talking about games, participating to the game jam. So I'm very happy for being part of the Judy team this time with all of you. And thanks for the opportunities and thanks to everyone for the amazing games that I had a chance to play.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much again, judges, for just doing this with me because it's really been a blast being able to just talk with you guys and deliberate on literally the incredible. Every single project was incredible in its own way, and I'm so happy that we were able to share this together. So in Linux and gaming, this is our very, very first game jam that we ever did. So it was definitely a challenge to be able to put this all together, but we are so excited and so happy that our community was able to come together. We had 261 participants join into the jam on itch.io, and we had 41 game submissions. And out of all of those, we picked the very best of the best to be winning contenders. So, for those of you guys out there who don't know what a game jam is, it's pretty much a designated time frame where you make a game from concept to completion. So, some game jams are only 24 hours long, others are 72 hours. In our case, the Unidos Game Jam was actually 3 weeks long. So these teams were able to put together more polished games and really get the idea and the theme in as concrete and as clear as possible. So the theme of the jam was celebrating Latinx and Hispanic culture. So in the theme of celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, we wanted to give the community an opportunity to celebrate their identity, their heritage, and give an homage to like their home countries or even just where they grew up, or maybe even the culture that their parents are where their parents are from, because not necessarily everybody has to be born and raised in Latin America or in a foreign country to experience the heritage of where their family comes from. So, with all that being said, please don't forget to donate to Gameheads and don't forget to donate to Pantera, which are our two charities of choice that we're raising money for Unidos Online. So, now that I got all of those things out of the way, let's start talking about the games that we judged and thought that were really stellar candidates for some of these categories. So, the very first one on my list is Unfolding. So Unfolding was interesting because it was a text-based game, and usually you don't really get to see that, especially in a 3-week jam where you have more time to do like art and things like that. So, why did we decide to go for Unfolding in regards to being contender for the game jam as a winner?
Well, I think I can start because Unfolding was a game that really moved me. I think it's fair to say. Like Elaine said, it's a text-based adventure game where you're reading the text and you're clicking on different parts of the text that look clickable to you. But there's a lot of depth and meaning and mechanic hidden under such a simple concept that they were able to implement. So, for example, and I didn't get this the first time I played, but the more I explored, the more I learned about what the author was trying to say. So there's the sentence that says, I'm in bed and it's 10 p.m. And then 10 p.m. is clickable. So you go there, oh, what does this do? And you click. And now it says it's 3 a.m. And you click it again. And then it says it's 5 a.m. So only after a couple times I understood, oh, this is the character, going through maybe a sleepless night where every time he looks at the time it's later, right, to the point where now it's early in the morning. And I started to get how the game plays with giving you things to click on that you don't know what they're going to do, and they actually reflect the state of mind of the character. And as the story goes, so this is a game about a day in the life of someone that lives it never quite tells you what world and city they live in, but I think we may all be able to relate. It's a world where racial injustice happens and police brutality happens, and someone with Latino Hispanic background has identity as something that's very dear to them, and having that being challenged by things that happen in a typical day of their life, right? And so I thought all of that combined, so the mechanic and other examples, and I don't want to give spoilers because this is the game where the narrative is the best part of it. But there are, for example, cases where oh, I want to text my dad is one of the options, and then dad says something, and you want to say something back in return that's really telling dad, hey dad, whatever you said isn't okay, and you click that option, then it strikes through that option, and the thing you actually told your dad was, hey, how's everyone else in the family? So it's like, I want to say these things, but in real life it's so hard to confront these problems that even if that's what I wanted to say, what I ended up saying is something entirely different and non-confrontational. So that, I don't know, it rang a bell. It spoke, to me in such a deep way. I did not expect this to happen in a game jam game. And that's why Unfolding for me was one of the best experiences that I had playing the games in the jam.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think one of the most beautiful things about Unfolding is how vulnerable the designer and author was, because you could
Yes.
really, like, it's almost like a mini autobiography where they are talking about their thoughts and about things that are important to them and how they confront those things in a very like intimate way. And it's very hard to be able to become vulnerable in games and put yourself out there like that. And I really really appreciated that they went as far as to talk about not only family issues that are maybe political, but also their identity, being LGBTQA and walking that in that way of life, and how that kind of like clashes with the culture of maybe not being accepted by your family because you're that way, or maybe having to reserve affection, being affectionate in public because you don't want people to look at you a certain way, or you don't want people to harm you. And the only reason I know this was in New York City is because of the audio that it said, "Stand
Mm-hmm.
clear of the closing doors, please." And I knew exactly what train. It's like they tell you, "So 7 train is the M train." I was like, "Oh, this is New York City." That's the only reason why I know. If they wouldn't have
That
put that in there,
explains so much.
yeah.
Explains a lot.
Yeah, if that's the only reason why I knew. I was like, "Oh, no, I know exactly where this is because I've taken this train before." And it's very reminiscent, it's, like, very nostalgic, of the New York subway, and I haven't been back home in a while. I'm from New Jersey, though, so I
Uh-huh.
just happen to know because I used to go there a lot. But I thought it was so well put together that even in that detail of having the audio of the subway playing to give you that sense of you're in an urban space, and, like, you get to understand that this is not just, like, a suburb. You're not like in the comfort of your own like home country or whatever. Like you're perhaps in a foreign area where you don't necessarily feel safe, where people around you may look at you a certain way because you don't look like them. So those all those things were so apparent, and it was all text based. Like no visuals at all whatsoever. It's literally we got all of this through words and audio files. And I thought that was super impressive.
Yeah, the other really interesting thing about the use of audio in there, because it does have that vulnerability to it right away that's very apparent. And Julia, I think you kind of hit on it. Like so much about stories is delivered through this is the character, this is what they want to do, and it's almost like it's kind of taught that characters shouldn't be indecisive. Characters should always want to know what they want to do, and they should leave that up to the player to decide what they want to do. Whereas this one, the fact that okay, I'll choose this option. No, you didn't say that option. Okay, I'll choose this option. No, you didn't say that option. That's such an interesting way to get into what somebody's thinking and the things they're
Mhm.
choosing not to say. And then on top of that, their use of certain sounds, like the subway one, immediately puts you in a particular location, even if you've never been there. You understand it. It makes total sense, which is a great kind of way to use audio to support that narrative. And then on top of that, there are other sounds that are very, very common to all of us every day, and that is phone sounds.
Yes.
And 9 times out of 10, when somebody is making their own project, they want their own stylized UI sounds to fit their own project, their own brand, their own style. So to use those ones that so many people hear every day, that immediately kind of puts you into a sort of headspace where you're like, oh, I'm just sitting on my phone. That's the same sound I heard 2 seconds ago, and we'll probably hear right after this. So I thought it was a really interesting way to just kind of ground the user right away in this person's world and make them feel vulnerable at the same time. So it was really well done.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Unfolding before we move to our next contender? Okay, we're
Yeah.
cool. All right, so next on my list, I have Luz Mala. So I know, Paul, you really loved Luz Mala. You want to share some thoughts about why?
I thought the game was just absolutely gorgeous right away, and I thought it used just the visuals to kind of direct the user into this, and it encouraged exploration right away. You know, some games are going to look amazing through maybe their artwork or their art style, or other ones are going to have particularly good graphics. Obviously, with a game jam, it's a challenge to make something that's captivating visually in such a short time frame while still focusing on all the other areas that make a well-rounded game. I think, as we all know, a good game is not just, you know, a good-looking game. You can have a very good-looking, very bad game at the same time. But with this game in particular, it was really stylized well, that suited the narrative, and I think its use of audio as well. It had a wonderful atmosphere that was created and that you're introduced to right away. And I thought both the visuals and the gameplay worked well together. And it's the fact that it is kind of a walking simulator, like they mentioned on their site, where it's, you're not really walking, you're sort of floating through the world, discovering what happened to you. And I just found that as I was playing it, I wanted to explore more of the world, even though it may not have been right direction to go or the right way to progress the story. You kind of like, it was absolutely gorgeous, and I thought it was really well done. So Elaine, you played this one too, I believe. How
Yes.
do you feel about this?
So one of the things that I really loved was the way they told a story, it was very minimal, but it was done in like what's it called in poetry when you have stanzas? It rhymed in Spanish. It had like
Mhm.
experts in the poetry. So I thought that was really beautiful because the whole game, if you are this light and it is your soul, let's say it's your soul, or it's the energy of somebody that passed away. It has that beautiful sense of like the playing with like life and death, and not necessarily making death sound scary, because usually like death is like, oh, horror game, survival horror, like blood everywhere and like you need to run away from monsters, blah blah blah. But in this one is like really somber, and it's almost as like death as a way of starting a conversation about something that we are all gonna go through, but bringing it into light about the beauty of life and death, and like those things, that the surrealness and the unknowns that come with all of that stuff. And I thought that was really beautifully put together. And in the game in Spanish, the UI says, um you're finding memories. So in the UI it says you 2 out of 4 memories have been found. So it was very reminiscent to me of Everybody Has Gone to the Rapture, I believe, which
Mhm.
it does plays on that same idea where you are plopped down into this world. You don't know what happened. You are kind of like looking at these streams of consciousness almost to try to figure out what happened. What are these people's stories? How do these people's stories intertwine with each other? And it was just I thought it was a very beautiful game, and it's very much like it, like a walking simulator, quote unquote, where you're just navigating the space and exploring it. And the way that the levels were designed was so that you had that freedom to go wherever you wanted, and there was no necessarily a right or a wrong way to go. You just kind of experienced it at your own pace. And I think Luis Mala was able to achieve that. And that is why it felt so good. And the atmosphere was just very moody. They very much chose a particular topic, and they stuck with it in all aspects of the design. So in the ambient like music and sound, in the lighting, in the little glowing of the orb when you're moving around, um, and the UI, like every little detail, I think they stuck with that theme of being of somberness and thinking about life and death and all of that. And I think they executed it really, really well. But that's all I got. Did anybody else get a chance to play Loose Mala, or at least like look at some screenshots and look at the videos of Loose Mala?
Yeah, I think it immediately looks inviting to exploration, which is, like you guys said, a feature of this game, which is hard to see in a game jam, because to get the mood right, to get the atmosphere right, it's such a, combination of different features and pieces of content that it's often not something you are able to achieve in a game jam. So even the first impression of the game is of a place where, oh, I would like to walk around here. I would like to explore. And for a minimalistic gameplay experience like you guys were describing, that's key, right? So I
Right.
think it does do a really good job of giving you that impression and making you want to dive into that world.
Yeah, and they just had a really interesting use of color through that too, where
Mm.
the world is quite pale, it's quite dark, but it's kind of desaturated, which sort of gives
Mhm.
you that hint of some kind of an afterlife, or at least just something has
Yeah.
happened here, even though there's still movement, like the world is clearly alive and moving. And then the first thing it introduces you to is right in front of you. If you just keep going forward, well, there's red. Why is there red over there? I need to go investigate what this red kind of
Mhm.
atmosphere this area is, and that is just such a subtle way to introduce you to the mechanic that it's like, oh, okay, cool, I see the thing, yes, that's collected one of the memories, I see what comes from that. Well, I just have to go find the other red areas, as opposed to sometimes a game like that can, like, if you're not familiar with the art style right away or with the mechanics or whatever, you might find yourself looking for something, but you don't know exactly what you're looking for if it's
Mhm.
one small item. So
Right.
I just thought this was a really well done and really simple way to introduce a game like that. And obviously, that's going to be really inviting for the player. And then once they're engaged in the game, then I think somebody will see this one through. So again, really well done.
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. All right. So before we go to our third nominee, I'd like to talk about a little bit of Latinx in gaming and why we're doing this. So, Latinx in Gaming has is an official 501c3 nonprofit organization. We just got our status recently, so we're really excited about that. So what we do is just uplift and amplify the voices of Latin American creators and Hispanic identifying creators all over the United States and also abroad. So that includes the Caribbean countries like Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Cuba, all across Central and South America, and of course, American-born Latinx folks. So when it comes to their streams, content creator streams, podcasts, game developers, journalists, anything that's related to the games industry, we uplift their work and we amplify their voices, and we just create community and a safe space for them to have a familia. And that's really what it's all about. So for those of you who are joining into our stream, right now we are discussing contending winners of the Unidos Game Jam, which occurred between September 12th through October 3rd. And we're kind of discussing our top picks for the winning categories. So our winning categories were in Best Narrative, Best Art, and let me read my list because I can't remember more than three things at the same time. Best Narrative, Best Art, Best Gameplay, Best Audio, and Best Use of Challenges, and Best Overall. So those are the categories that we are kind of judging right now, and the games that we picked are reflective of those categories specifically. So, the third contender that we have on our list is Enchanted Island. So, Enchanted Island is based on Puerto Rican culture, so I'm not going to be biased. I'm going to let somebody else talk about it a little bit.
I'll chime in. So I got a chance to play Enchanted Island, and I love the game. I love the setup. I love the design. I love the parallax effects that the game provides. I haven't been to Puerto Rico in a while, but when I was playing the game, I felt like I was in the island, like the chatting with different people in the city and seeing the ocean, seeing the beach. And in the game, you take kind of the role of this girl who just turned 18 and she wants to go to El Yunque, which my understanding is kind of the I don't know, like it's like the woods or the jungle. I'm not sure exactly which part is it, but that's her journey. Her journey, she wants to get there, and she's 18, so it's super exciting. And she's walking around the island and talking to all these different characters and the different settings, like how the game is set up. Is beautiful. I really enjoy playing it. I know, Elaine, you played a lot of it, so I would love to hear more about.
Yes.
Even though it's your biased opinion, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, so for sure, one of the admirable things about this team is that they went in the extra mile to really have a game that is like a full blown story with a bunch of mechanics, and it's like a fully packaged game, including a save and load system, which I never see in a game jam game.
Yeah.
So it's awesome because you can get to save it and I can play it later because of the breadth of the content, which I think was super smart on their part. So being Puerto Rican and like living on the island, born and raised, like for sure I can see the similarities and how they were able to capture the island and some of the very specific things that we have inside the game. So El Yunque is our national rainforest, and it covers quite a big part of the island. And one of the beautiful things about El Yunque is that with our indigenous community, it was a sacred point. Back in the day, this is what I was told by the indigenous community. I don't know if it's hard science, but it has been said that you would be able to see the tip of the mountain on El Yunque all the way from miles away, from where the El Junco is really at. So the indigenous communities will always looked at that point for direction, so that they could perform like the very sacred rituals and honoring rites and things like that in El Junque and in various caves that were there. So it was really beautiful to see that, as well as like the little mini carts where they sell coco frio, which is cold coconut. You literally go to Puerto Rico and they have coconuts in a freezer or a refrigerator, and for $1 you can get one, and then with a machete they chop off the top, they put a straw in it, and it's like cold coconut water. It's delicious. So they even had those little things, and I loved it in the game. In the beginning, you go in the car with your friends, and the car is just moving like an on autopilot. You're not doing anything to it, but you're getting a little bit of that story and seeing those things. And one of them, which is actually something that happens all the time, including like me and my family have done it, we stop by at the street because there are street vendors. And during the late summer, early fall, there's this fruit that we have. It's called quenepas, and they're really small green like fruits that it's all pulp and like a giant seed. So it's kind of like a imagine like if it being like a tiny mango, but the pulp is like really sweet and very soft. It's not as hard as a mango. But we have that fruit, and when the vendors are outside, everybody stops by and they ask, "Do you want some quenepas?" So I thought that was so cute, and it really reminded me. I was very nostalgic of like the island and how I grew up and our road trips that we used to take. Because Puerto Rico is only 100 miles across from east to west. It's really tiny. So in a day, you could literally go around almost the entire island. So having those road trips with my family back in the day, like there was so much nostalgia. So that's why I didn't want to be biased towards the game. But I thought it was really, really sweet how they were able to add those little cultural references that if you're Puerto Rican, you know. It's like, yes, that I understand that reference. I can respect that, and that's true to what the culture and authenticity of the island is. One of the things that I loved about the game is that at a certain point, you get a little parrot companion. Um, I forgot what the name of the little parrot was, but the parrot perches on your shoulder, and you kind of walk around with a little parrot on your shoulder, which I thought was really cute. But it's kind of like your Navi, like in Legend of
Yeah.
Zelda, you have Navi annoying you. Well, the parrot like kind of does the same thing. So I thought
Hopefully
that was
not
really
as
sweet.
annoying as Navi. But
Yeah. Right. But I thought there were so many little smart decisions here and there, and it really it really got you invested in the story because of the things that were going on. So in the beginning, you got close to the main character and to the friends, and as you progress through the narrative, you want to continue in it because of all those little seeds that were planted in the beginning of the game. So I thought it was very, very well executed.
nice.
Alrighty, let's see who is on our list next. Okay, Tamales con Familia. Paula, I know you love this game.
Oh, oh yes, I really love and I like to talking about this game because, well, this game almost made me cry. Uh, if if you read the description of this game, you see that it says that it's a calm and repetitive game. So maybe you're thinking, what do you need to do in this game? Basically, you are a shy young child that is helping your family to prepare tamales. So it's simple. You have two bowls on the table in front of you, and you only need to select the two spoons to drag the ingredients and prepare it one by one. Only this. Then, but why this game is so beautiful, in my opinion? Because while you are doing it, You are listening to a conversation of your mother, her sisters, and your grandmother. And it's a story of loss and change, and you totally feel involved in the game. And it all comes with a beautiful soundtrack playing in the background. So I thought this game was well written. The narrative was very, very organized, and you feel immersive all the time. The music is so relaxing, it's calm and beautiful. And there was a moment, it was kind of funny in my opinion. I totally forgot that I was preparing the tamales, and I was only listening the conversation and following everything. Then someone suddenly says, "Hey, you are not put enough ingredient here. Come on, pay attention. What we are doing? Come on." So it's amazing and beautiful. You feel that you are there in the room, being part of the family and following the conversation, try to understand what's going on every time. So I really recommend this lovely game. I really love it to play this game.
Yeah,
I had
I
a super interesting experience with this game. I'm a terrible cook. I can cook to save my own life. I can do scramble. Like, there's nothing I can do that will taste well. And then I put this game on after the recommendations I heard, and I keep like the mechanics are pretty simple. You have like very few ingredients, and I kept doing it backwards. And the game was like, no, you can't do that. And I was like, not even the tamales in the game I can make. I'm terrible.
That's too
Yes, true,
funny.
true.
That attention to detail is so neat because you don't really think about those like one-off like mistakes that the player may make. Like sometimes you totally ignore it, but the fact that they played with it and made it into a feature where it was more reactive to the player, I thought that was really nice. And the fact that you make tamales, I've never made tamales, but in Puerto Rico we have something similar called pasteles. Instead of corn masa, we use plantain masa, and it's such a like intimate family tradition that you do with your grandma or just loved ones. And because it takes so much time, it's really a labor of love. You have a lot of time to talk, and you have a lot of time to just either talk about like people that were in the family who are no longer with you, or just experiences that your grandmother had prior, like making pasteles when she was younger, and her telling you the stories of her mistakes and things like that. And being able to listen in on the knowledge and understand how to prepare it so that you could learn it and then teach your kids and kids. It's a very much a generational like oral recipe, because I don't remember anybody in my family writing that stuff down. It's very much like by sight, and like you repeat it, and if you forget it, well, you're screwed. Like you're gonna have to go on the internet and try to replicate it, but it never tastes the same because like what grandma's cooking, mom's cooking, I can never replicate it ever. I can try, but I thought that was such beautiful. It was so beautifully done, and in its simplicity, all of that really shined. What shined was that feeling of family, that feeling of love, in the simplicity of it all, and wrapped into a nice, beautiful little game that was repetitive, so that you wouldn't take your eyes and concentration off of what the meaningfulness of the game was. I thought was really well done.
Nice. And it sounds very poetic that it's called tamales con familia, almost like is as if familia was the one of the ingredients of the tamales, almost like
Yeah.
you know making tamales really means that you're spending time with your family, and I got that vibe from
Mm.
what the game was trying to say, which it just makes everything sound so poetic and beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so next one that I have is we don't know how to pronounce this game, so we're gonna say it two ways. It's either
We're gonna murder
Muleteer.
it.
Yes. So the game's either called Muleteer or Muleteer. Whichever it is, we are so sorry for the game developers that did it. But it is your game, so please correct us in chat at some point, because we have no idea how to say this game title properly. But
I,
wow,
I,
this
I
game
can I
was
can
beautiful. Go ahead.
I can say a little bit more about the name. I looked it up, so
Oh, you did?
and I realized I'm gonna come across as super biased because after I realized what the game was about, I was like, oh, this should win all the awards. The name is actually in Spanish is arrieros,
Uh-huh.
and an arriero is somebody that goes from one town to another with their mule packed with goods, and they just take them from town to town and sell goods, and then they're basically like business people from way back in the day. Well, is a core part of Colombian culture, and especially from the city I'm
Oh.
from, Medellin. So arrieros from Medellin were kind of the core of how our culture from that city became so businesslike. So before like the cities, before like all the industrialization, people from Medellin will like that was one of their main traits is being an arriero, and then you will have your mule, and then you'll pack your mule with a bunch of goods, and start your journey for multiple days and go from town to town selling these goods or like basically delivering cargo on your mule. So that setup, and I think what probably the developers were thinking is like, how do I translate this word arriero to English? And muleteer, which I think is the right pronunciation, is actually based on a French word. So I think there's a big journey for how they got to this to the name of the game. But when you look at the game or you play the game, you actually have a bunch of references to my hometown. So again, totally biased. It's an awesome setup, but I'll let somebody else talk about the gameplay.
Yeah. I thought it was so cool. Definitely a really memorable experience, not just because of the art, but in the way that you interacted. So now that you say that it was somebody that goes with a mule from town to town, it makes sense that from town to town, you would come across difficulties and challenges. And it makes sense why the game was set up the way that it was. Um, but having combat, and I've never seen this before in my life in any game, having combat with a musical instrument was incredible to me. Like super incredible. Like sure, like the most recent memory that I have of a game with a guitar mechanic was The Last of Us 2, where you sat down with your guitar and you played the chords, but that was just like a really like calm and peaceful maybe I think maybe two times you did it in the game, but it didn't really have any meaning towards the gameplay. But in this one, it's like the way that you defeat things is by playing your guitar, and that was really cool. I had never seen anything like that.
Yeah, I thought this was one of like the first games that I played, so I was like, I kind of didn't know what to expect from any of these games, and then the first thing it is like you jump in and it's like, okay, you go find your mule, and it's late at night and you're like, oh, okay, that'll be the mechanic. And then as soon as you find your mule, it's like, okay, now you have to defeat these goblins by playing guitar, and you're like, I thought we were fighting a mule. And then you do that, and yeah, the mechanic was really well done, and like trying to do a tempo based mechanic like that is really challenging because it can very quickly become very frustrating for the player if they think they're hitting an action in time, but the game is not giving them the positive feedback or anything like that. So that's a challenge in its own right. And then I don't want to give too much about the gameplay away, but essentially later you then like, okay, you're then traveling across this world, which has really well done low poly kind of styled art, which I think is a fine line between coming across as still gorgeous and an immersive landscape or looking a little bit like the game did not look cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes that art style can look like, like it's not done right. It doesn't look that good. So I think they did a fantastic job. And then, later it turns into almost like an endless runner platform jumper. And it was like, well, where did that come from? And then there's like another combat system later. So just that level of mechanics that actually worked from a game jam of this length was just absolutely fantastic.
Paul, please don't tell me the mule dies.
It's a long game. I
Yeah, I have to agree. I think gameplay wise, one of the things that I noticed was in the very similar style like Guitar Hero or any rhythm game like even DDR back in the day, you have a little bit of feedback when you miss something. Or when you didn't do it right. So I know that when you get the chord right in the guitar, it's green. But if you miss it, it either goes to yellow or red. So you do get a little bit of visual feedback too, which again, like when it comes to polishing game jams, sometimes the devs don't have the time to add those little things in there. And the fact that they were able to do that, plus have this really neat mechanic, plus have really nice stylized art, plus have really nice audio. Like I think they did a really, really good job at trying to make it as polished polished as possible, and really try to get the player into that core mechanic loop so that they didn't feel like they didn't know what they were doing, or that they were not receiving any type of okay from the game, letting them know I'm doing this correctly or I'm not doing this correctly. Because I did notice there was a little bit of clash between when you're playing the guitar and the music and the ambience kind of clashing a little bit together. So it was a little bit hard sometimes to get to know whether I did something wrong. But then again, it's just a game jam. Like, we understand it was only 3 weeks, but even then, even though there may be some little fixes that could be done, I think overall the entire game as a whole was really put well together and polished for the time in consideration. So, any other additional feedback for the multier team? Nope. Okay, cool. Alrighty. So again, for those of you joining the stream, we are doing a judging segment on all the games that were contenders for the winning categories of the Unidos Game Jam. So again, the Game Jam was from September 12th through October 3rd, and we were just here trying to dissect and kind of give our feedback to the dev teams and really explain why we think these games that we selected are contenders for the winning categories. So again, please don't forget to donate through the entirety of Unidos Online here. We're sending all the money that we are donating to Gameheads, which is a Bay Area based nonprofit organization that teaches game design and game development to kids middle school through college. So they're doing some really awesome work over there, getting mentors for the summer. A lot of really neat games are coming out of that program. So I really recommend that you check the website out, gameheads.com. And our second charity is Pantera. So Pantera does sanctuaries for jaguars. So as we all know here, the jaguar is really an important icon and figure of mythology and culture in a lot of Latin American and Central American countries. So what Pantera is trying to do with the Jaguar Jaguar Corridor Initiative, is to preserve the DNA of the jaguar so that it doesn't go extinct, and trying to figure out how they can protect habitats all across Latin America so that the jaguar can exist and remain on planet Earth for our generation to enjoy, for our future generations to enjoy. So please, if you can donate whatever amount counts, we would love your support for those two charities. So now the next game that I have on my list to discuss is the world that once was. So Juliet, I think you had announced the game jam during your podcast. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this game comes from some of the listeners to PodQuest, which is, as I mentioned in the beginning, is my podcast about game development in Portuguese. I think in total we had 5 or 6 entries out of the 41 that happened to come from people in my community, in our community at the PodQuest Discord server, and they're mostly based in Brazil. I think some of them are based abroad, but it was nice to see how the theme of the game jam spoke to them. So that was some great feedback that I got about the Unidos Online game jam from those folks. And this is one of the games that they made, and uh, I I was really impressed with a few of the features that they were able to put into the world that once was. So this is a game where you're this little robot who's visiting in a post-apocalyptic Earth, and every record of our culture has been lost except for a few artifacts that this robot is able to find and scan, and then he gets a glimpse of a cultural icon of a particular civilization, and in this case he happened to land in South America. So he's every level will give him a glimpse of what the culture of a particular country in South America was like. So your goal in the game is to collect these artifacts and get from the start of that level to the end of the level using the least amount of batteries possible. So the robot is battery operated. So it's a 2D game where you just have to traverse the 2D level, like I was explaining, but they have so many really interesting features added up to make it a challenging and rewarding game. For example, so there are several hazards that the robot has to avoid. Can't fall into fire, can't fall into a pit. So they'll make some tiles along the way to break as you pass through them. So you have to plan your path so you don't go back through the same tiles you stepped on before because they will no longer be there. Or some levels have water in them, and the interesting thing about water is it doesn't kill the robot, but it carries the robot without using batteries. So whatever direction the water is flowing, if you can plan your path around, using as much of that as possible to your advantage, you get a better score at the end. You also have, some places where you have to drag boxes, and typical puzzle games where, if you drag them just the wrong way, they're now stuck and you have to restart. So every single one of those things is a mechanic that I've seen whole games made out of that one mechanic. Mobile games where the puzzle is to drag the boxes around. So for a team to accomplish this in a game jam where they combine multiples of these and they have that layer of narrative that I found really interesting and really, I don't know, just something cool about someone completely naive and ignorant to the whole culture, discovering what's interesting about a particular culture, in this case Latin American culture. Oh, it was a nice premise. And so I think they had a really really strong marriage of premise and gameplay, which made this game to me be one of the contenders in our list.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that I saw in this game in particular is that it looked towards the future instead of looking towards the past,
Yeah.
which I didn't really see any of the other games do. Because a lot of the games really tried to tell the story of the past, of what was the indigenous communities like, and the present. How do we use our cultures to tell our stories from today, or like very personal, intimate stories. But thinking about the future and what it would be like if we weren't here anymore, and how our culture gets translated, to me that was a very, very interesting and very curious way of telling the story without having necessarily to be very about cultural centered. It was more
Right.
like, let me gather information so that I can understand what happened here, instead of being, let me immerse in the culture of this one place,
Right.
which I could potentially visit right now. Of course, this is a pandemic, we can't visit right now, but
Yeah.
things that we could enjoy now. I thought that was like really smart and very unique in the way that they were able to achieve that.
Yeah, that part of it had that vibe, and of course, we're comparing bananas to apples here. But Horizon Zero Dawn is a game where you have that experience of exploring somewhere. I'm not gonna spoil where it is because it's a big part of the discovery in that game. But you do see, what happens, if a particular place that you could know where it is just, is victim of years and years of calamity, right? What comes out of that, and what excerpts of the culture and sometimes the very personal stories of the people that used to live in that place, what what's left of that becomes very small puzzle pieces that you have to piece together, and it's impossible to piece everything together because you have so little of them. But that feeling of discovery, it's almost like rediscovery, but it's all different because it's the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's hard to explain, but it has that vibe. And this game, in its own little way, had a little bit of that vibe, and that's pretty cool to have found in a game jam game.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree. Alrighty, let's see the next one. Okay, Jorona. So, Jorona was definitely, I was so impressed by this game on all different levels. But I will reserve my feedback until the end so that other folks can give a little bit of theirs.
Well, I love horror games, so this was one that got my attention right away. Like, Journey is such an iconic horror story from Latin America, right? And seeing it now, like in the game, was super exciting. I love the setting as well. Like the setting is on this mansion that is in northern Mexico that is considered to be haunted. And then once you enter the mansion, a lot of the artwork inside the mansion has references to the Mexican Revolution. So it does transport you to a different place, a different and a different time. It has kind of that vibe of like the PlayStation days, the early PlayStation days, like those titles that we started enjoying back then. But it was really really well done. Like it had that vintage look of like, hey, I might be playing a PlayStation 1 game, but like beautifully executed, from the graphics to the controls, to the progression. Like when you're playing the game, like it asks you to start getting these different items, and you kind of have to figure out the way to be able to move to the next stage. But it's not explicit; it's all implicit. So I had a great time. Like every time I was playing the game, I felt like I felt scared. I felt like I was in that setting with like very low light. It's at night, and in this mansion that I don't want to be in, but I still want to solve like the puzzle. I still want to get to the end. So I enjoy the game a lot, and from the graphics to the sound to the narrative and the story.
Yeah, I'm a big sucker for any adventure game that makes me go grab a notebook or a piece of paper so I can write down something. Like if it's a puzzle that requires that little bit of extra kind of stuff, like I think Return of the Obra Dinn was a game, obviously very stylized, but that kind of same sort of like it's trying to do something very deliberately. This doesn't look like any other game you've seen, and it has a really interesting story to it too as well. And so in this game, I thought it was really ambitious to make a game like this that is going for a very stylized retro look that isn't your typical platformer, just kind of side scroller like that. That's going for that old point and click adventure kind of game, while at the same time delivering a really rewarding gameplay and kind of story experience. Like once you've kind of opened this thing and you get through these doors, like I think just the fact that the doors are branded with the different suits for a deck of cards, that's such an interesting way. Like immediately you start the game and you're like, oh well, I understand that there will be 4 different kind of levels that I need to progress through, and I need to go get these items. Like it did a really good job of introducing the player to the story, what they need to do without giving them a tutorial level, and I thought that was really, really well done.
Yeah, 100%. I saw the reason why I really enjoy this game is also because I'm a big horror fan, but they were able to adapt a lot of the design from Resident Evil into the game. It's like it's a Latin American version of Resident Evil. And I thought that was so smart and fantastic. Even down to having like journals where you can find more information on where to go next. And having that back tracing of like, hey, I don't have the key to this door yet, but let me continue through the level design and maybe I can unlock something that will give me that key so I can Metrovania and go back and see what's in there. And even down to the way that you get a weapon, like you don't have a weapon right away, like you just have your lantern. But in going through the game's progression, you do get an axe so that you can break down some wood planks so that you can get through doors that you weren't able to get through before. So excuse me. So that whole like gameplay progression loop I thought was so tightly and well done. And you don't see that in any game jam. I haven't even been able to achieve that in the game jams that I've been a part of because it's really hard to do to find that loop that works for your game and doesn't feel like it's stapled on and it doesn't feel like it was an afterthought, but that was actually well put together. I thought that was really smart. And the jump scares themselves, like they didn't seem tacky. I didn't find it like, oh, I'm gonna turn around this corner and La Llorona is gonna pop right there and scare me. Like I didn't get that feeling of tackiness when it comes to some horror games. Like it was very well put together where things would just zoom by you every now and then to scare you and it was kind of like, well, what was that? And you could hear audio of whispers and things that are really creepy, but there's actually no harm, like there's nothing to in that room to harm you. So it's like really playing with the psychology of it all and playing with your expectation of when you get scared. And that's I think the one number one thing that I really enjoyed is that I didn't feel like I knew what was going to happen next. In fact, I was like very cautious as to like I don't know what I'm getting myself into in this room. I'm going to look at every corner and see what happens. And then it is at that period where you're relaxed and you're hyper focused on reading something that something zooms by and you're like, no, I can't, I can't do this. I had to pause in the menu sometimes to be like, I need to calm down because I don't know what I'm gonna do after this.
It's a pretty ambitious choice too. The way that like because as soon as a game gives you an item like an axe, you're like, so what's this for? Like, you suddenly don't know if there is a damage system or if something will attack you. So
Yeah.
I thought it kind of introduces, like, as opposed to giving you the axe at the end when, oh well, I've got a shovel, so I know that I just need this other item for that
Mhm.
one thing. When they give you a weapon like an axe pretty early on, you're like, should I be scared of something else right now? What's going on here? So
Yeah.
again, it was really well done.
And there's that little journal system too that they had where it gives you a little bit of story, but very simply also tells you where to go, which I really appreciated because in some horror games you kind of just left alone to figure it out, and sometimes it can get pretty frustrating to try to figure out what is it that I missed. And you don't have a map and you don't have a mini map. So trying to figure out in the spaces of where you may have missed a key or where you may have missed some wooden planks that you have to tear down so that you can get to. I think it was very smart that in those little journal snippets I was getting an objective, but in a stylized way where it felt like part of the story. It didn't tell me like straight up mission number 1, here's where you need to go and here's what you need to find. So I thought that was really smart on their part to do as well. But the retro vibes, super enjoyed that, and it was well done because sometimes it looks like out of place and it looks like, oh, I didn't have enough time and I don't have the skill set to make art, so therefore I'm gonna go with this aesthetic. But they definitely deliberately used that aesthetic, and I think it played very well to their advantage and the whole feel of the game. So props to Game Dev Boy, which I think was the one who made Juruna. Okay, so next on my list is Weira. Weira is beautiful. I love the bunny when it flaps its ears as you're traveling. To me, that got me. That melted my heart. That was beautiful.
Yeah, it's a game that I played after your recommendation, Elaine, and also really enjoyed. Also, really, I think beautiful is a great word for it because there's something about how the environment reacts to the gameplay that's I don't know that just makes it. It's almost like how a fractal can be beautiful. That's the kind of beautiful this game is to me, and not so much in this particular piece of art, but just how everything is combined, and how it reacts to your gameplay. It was fun to play. It was challenging at some points.
Yeah.
So I think it had several ingredients for a strong contender for our list as well. Uh, Art, the use of sound. I think Paul could speak more to that too. And just just the overall feeling of just floating around in this game is I don't know. It's just well done. It's tight. It's cool. So I really enjoyed this one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that they integrated the music to contribute to the aesthetic of the visuals, I think is really well done. It's something that I wish more people tried to do. Is that sometimes audio is just seen as this like very late in the cycle. Hey, we'll put some audio in where we need it, and then it's done. And obviously, I mean, I'm biased as a sound person, but
He's
I
been
think
burned too many
audio.
times from audio being the last thing we talk about in the future.
It can do so much. I mean, again, I'm biased, but audio can do so much for additional storytelling by providing additional sounds for what you don't see necessarily on the screen. So it can save you a lot of time there. And in a game like this, where I think most people would just drop music in and call it a day. I have a pickup sound when I get my carrots. I have a negative sound when I hit a cloud, and job done. That's my game. So for them to go the extra little step and actually go like, hey, what if we made the music will change with every different level? Okay, well, that's great. That should happen in most games anyways. But then let's make it so that it actually pulses the world, and that the more kind of busy your song is, the more dynamic the world is going to be. Well, then you can start getting into like, hey, maybe the fact that the opening levels are a little bit easier, they'll have a more calm kind of soundtrack. Well, your world is going to be kind of calm. It's going to be less distracting for the player. And then as you get into later levels, the score can be busier, have more going on. Well, that's going to make the world look busier. And again, it's more of that your visuals and your sound working together to create more of a holistic experience. And I thought I'd love to know when that idea came up, if it was a happy accident through the design, or if like in very late, or if it was like, no, we're going to do this right from the get-go as more of a stylistic approach. But yeah, really well done. I like that game a lot.
Yeah, I liked it too, and I really loved the choice in soundtracks that they chose. Like the ending instrumentation of each track was very, very beautiful, and it's very, very culturally centered in a very subtle way. Because the art itself, was a little rabbit. There's carrots. It's a globe. So the style, the art style, didn't seem that cultural per se. But when it came to the music, that's where it really shined. Where you could tell it was like, okay, like there's something special about the culture that this developer is trying to portray in the game that they made, and I thought it was really, really beautiful, and something that you don't see often too, because rhythm games are super difficult because there's a
Yeah.
lot of balancing that comes in with integrating music into gameplay, and to do that in 3 weeks, like, it was very impressive. And the fact that the world was also reactive to the tempo and the beat and everything that had to do with those musical tracks is really phenomenal. All right,
Yeah, and
great.
makes them
Go
more
ahead.
impressive. Oh, sorry. No, I just gonna add to what you just said because it makes it even more impressive that they went for the challenge of making the music something that's culturally significant, which is one of the challenges in the game jam, is that their game is so much about that music and so much about how it integrates to the gameplay that it's not as easy a choice to pick which song you want as it would be in other games where the song is just there for background, right? So to have done that, so that's why I really suspect that this decision was made very early on, because I think it would have been very hard for them to for it to just happen to be that way. And especially as you see the progression that Paul described in the levels, and the music progresses the same way, and to do all that while still picking music that is culturally significant, I think it's an extra feather in that cap that they were able to do.
Right, yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's wraps up the very first segment of our contenders and our judging round. So stay tuned tomorrow at the same time from 2 p.m. EST to 3 p.m. EST, where we will go through the rest of the games on our list and also shout out some honorable mentions. So enjoy the rest of Unidos Online today, guys.